Welcome. Thank you for joining us for our webinar, Preserving Sound, Introduction to Caring for Audio Collections. I am Danielle Fraser, Library Conservator at the Preservation and Conservation Laboratory, Heritage Library Division, NALIS. Just some info about the live English to Spanish interpretation for this webinar. Click on the globe icon in the taskbar of Zoom and choose one language you wish to listen to. Bilingual participants are welcome to listen to the original audio, which will turn the interpretation off. Everyone else can choose to listen in English or Spanish. You will hear the original audio of the speaker at a lower volume in the background of the interpreter. You can mute the original audio if you wish. You are invited to submit your questions at any time during the webinar by using either the chat or the Q&A feature in Zoom. We will address as many questions as possible during the dedicated Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Before we get into our topic, let me introduce our organization, NALIS. The National Library and Information System Authority of Trinidad and Tobago, NALIS, is the country's coordinator of all library and information services. Beyond the Heritage Library, there are 20 public libraries, 6 co-located community libraries, 5 libraries in correctional institutions, libraries in secondary and primary schools, and special libraries in several government agencies, all administered by NALIS. Please visit our website, www.nalis.gov.tt, for more information about our services. Follow at NALIS868 on Facebook, Instagram, X, and YouTube. The Heritage Library Division, located on the 2nd floor of the National Library Building, Port of Spain, Trinidad, helps NALIS fulfill the goal of acquiring, promoting, and preserving national heritage information. Special collections acquired or donated to the Heritage Library Division consist of mainly traditional library items created by or of interest to a significant person or organization of Trinidad and Tobago. I invite you to follow the Heritage Library Division on Facebook at NALIS HLDTT. The Preservation and Conservation Laboratory is responsible for ensuring the overall longevity of library materials, with attention to the Heritage Library Division and its collections of historical importance. The PAC Laboratory, which was officially commissioned in 2013, helps NALIS fulfill its role as the International Federation of Library Associations and Institutions Preservation and Conservation, or IFLA PAC, Regional Center for the English-speaking Caribbean. NALIS is a part of a network of 16 IFLA PAC centers around the globe with the aim of providing knowledge and expert advice on preservation and conservation practices within their region, and to serve as IFLA's key area of work on safeguarding and promoting culture and heritage. We've continued our mission of raising awareness of preservation and conservation issues through our Preservation Webinar Series. In case you missed any of our previous webinars, check out the YouTube playlist on the NALIS channel. Let me introduce our facilitator, Dr. Perla Olivia Rodríguez Reséndiz is a researcher and professor at the Institute of Library and Information Research of the National Autonomous University of Mexico. She conducts theoretical and applied research on the digital preservation of sound and audiovisual materials. She founded the Ibero-American Network for the Digital Preservation of Sound and Audiovisual Archives under the Ibero-American Program for Science and Technology for Development. She served as the Vice President of the International Association of Sound and Audiovisual Archives from 2020 to 2023. She served as Deputy Director of Production at Radio Educación and coordinated the Laboratory for Artistic Sound Experimentation. She has created and coordinated the International Seminar on Sound and Audiovisual Archives from 2001 to 2013. And since 2015 has organized the International Congress on Digital Archives held at UNAM. She coordinated the founding of the National Sound Archive of Mexico, Fonoteca Nacional de Mexico, and served as Director of Sound Promotion and Dissemination at that institution from 2008 to 2013. She coordinates the Seminar on Research in Sound Information Studies at UNAM. She has published seven author books and edited 13 others. Her research stands out for linking socially relevant issues such as the preservation of indigenous peoples, heritage, climate change, and noise pollution, among others. She incorporates emerging technologies and innovative methods of digital preservation, such as web and social media archiving. She collaborates with various memory institutions at the national and international levels. She launched the Digital Sound Archive of Mexico's indigenous peoples. She founded the AI Information and Data Laboratory. She is recognized by the scientific community and by professionals at memory institutions. So we are honored to welcome you, Dr. Perla, as you share your expertise with us. Bienvenida. Over to you, Dr. Perla.
Good morning. Thank you very much. I am very happy to greet you from Mexico City. I would like to thank the director and specifically all the organizers of the National Library in Trinidad, for Jasmine, for giving me this invitation, and of course to Danielle for organizing this webinar. Today, I am going to speak to you specifically about an introduction to preserving and caring for audio collections. In order to begin this presentation, I would like to just point out, even though we already said it a bit before, that one of my main goals in my research has been working with sound collections, working with sound which has been recorded as a part of a heritage which is extremely important for society. And we are going to begin specifically with this introduction to the webinar by speaking about an aspect which is essential for everyone, especially for those who work in archives, in museums, etc. And this is recognizing that within our collections, there are also In addition to books, videos, photos, there are also audio recordings. So we are going to begin with this webinar by reflecting on the following. Next slide, please. First of all, in order to understand what is sound as a document, we have to recognize that we are beings of sound. Before we are born, we are listened. This is our first link and connection to the world. At 4 months of life, within the womb, the fetus or the embryo is already listening through a system which we can say is as in water. And in this way, we recognize the world through sound within the womb. But also, when we are born, we create sounds. So sound is in our voice, but there are also ways for us to create sounds. The way we walk, the way in which we open a door in our house. So even how we snore. So these are sounds that identify us and which daily we are producing on a day-to-day basis. So in addition to this, we need to also recognize that there are sounds which are part of our life and which we are never going to forget, including as time goes and even as we get older, these memories and these sounds continue to come unexpectedly when we are listening to a song, some music, or when we are listening to a joke, an anecdote. There are sounds that when we were children, for example, that remind us how our grandparents used to speak, how our parents used to speak, or the music we used to listen to. So this is our natural, our nature. And this our sound, nature of our sound that we have had since our birth, and it's the last sense that we lose before we die. So creating songs every day, which allows us to recognize sounds. This is the beginning of what society also does. Society also creates sounds daily through the radio. We listen to music, we listen to our sound environment, and these are all our sounds in the market, for example, in traditional parties, etc. So in daily life, we have sound. And also, society also remembers these sounds, and the way in which we remember these sounds is precisely through preserving these recordings of our audio sounds. Next slide, please. So basically, we are going to have a definition of what is an audio document. When we record a sound in any medium, when it's analogical, digital, we are creating data which we can only listen to and which are temporary. So the only way to conserve this sound, for example, my voice, is to tape it, to record it. So the only way in which you can record these conferences, these webinars in the university in Trinidad and Tobago is by recording them. The only way to record music that we are listening to in different festivals in Trinidad and Tobago, or which we listen to in different parties, is by taping and recording them. So what are we referring to when we are speaking about recorded sound? We are talking about a type of document. So we have books, just as we have books. We also have videos and film documents, photos as documents. We also have a category which is extremely important to recognize, which are these audio collections, these audio documents. These audio documents have 4 qualities. They have content, they have context, structure, and you can also concentrate on one or in more. They can be analog or digital as well. What do I mean? I am meaning to recorded sound, to music, to your voice, to the environment, to noises, these which are recorded. This is the content I'm speaking about. The context, however, refers to the information. Those of us who work in libraries, we can know exactly what metadata refers to, from where, when, who, and why we recorded this information. These are data which define the qualities of the audio document, the sound document. The structure, however, refers to the characteristics, the physical characteristics and the intellectual characteristics of the document. For example, if you're only using one of the 4 elements of the language, there's voice, music, etc. If it's a radio drama, or if it's a radio program, or if we're talking about a podcast, or if we are talking about a document on the radio. This is what we are referring to specifically when we talk about the structure of the document, and the support or the medium is the physical artifact in which these sounds are recorded. If it's a disc, a CD or vinyl disc, or for example, if it's a hard drive or other format. So when we're talking about a sound document, an audio collection, we need to think about these 4 qualities which are fundamental. Next slide, please. The history of audio recordings is very short because of its recent compared to the history of books. For example, it's barely a 1.5 century, 150 years that we are able to record sound. So before it was not possible to record sound. So consequently, everything, all creations and ideas were lost and were not recorded before this time. So it's only 150 years ago that we were able to record sounds. And one of the first mediums which made this possible, which made this phenomenon possible, was the discovery of cylinders, the wax cylinders, different cylinders. And these were a medium which made it possible to record sound. These first apparatuses had a very short lifespan or a short recording span. And the first cylinders were to record classes or audiobooks or testimonials, for example. However, they were very selective. So only a few people were able to buy phonographs in order to listen to these wax cylinders. So we do not know if in Trinidad are there any collections of these wax cylinders. I'm not sure. But if you have them, these are documents that we should consider as huge repositories because they are the first supports mediums which existed in the history of audio recordings. After this, the recording industry and audio reproductions produced other mediums, other media. For example, here you also had the gramophone. After the cylinder, there was a gramophone in which you were able to record on these huge discs, which were very heavy, and they continued to be very selective in terms of people having access either a phonograph or a gramophone. So only persons who had a lot of purchasing power were able to purchase these technologies at the time. As the revolution continued in terms of recording, of audio recordings continued, then we also had the apparition of the magnetic file, this magnetic threads, cassette tapes. We had reel-to-reel options as well, and there were also different digital supports. So in this webinar, I am not going to go deeper into each one of these, but of course, I would be able to send you a bibliography at the end so that you would be able, if you desire, to go deeper into the evolution of the different recording apparatus throughout the years. What I would like to point out here is that it has been a story of 150 years in which we have had the possibility to record sound. However, recognizing that sound, that recorded sound, is an essential part of heritage was very late in coming. It's only 4 decades that UNESCO has put a lot of emphasis internationally so that we need to call attention, that we need to be careful that all the collections that we have recorded in different supports and medium need to be recognized and appreciated because they're unique. However, unlike a book where we can have 2,000 copies, etc. When we are speaking about an audio collection, an audio document, we are talking about one document, which is the sole and unique document, except of course for music. In the case of music, in the beginning years, in the development of the music industry, there was always only one original at the beginning, despite music. So we need to remember that there has been more than a century and a half that we had the possibility to record sound. It's only 150 years. And this is an extremely important fact because when we look at recordings and the preservation of digital documents, we need to remember that we are going to find a huge range of different medium which belong to different times. Next slide, please. So practically, there are two great stages in terms of the recordings. There was the analog stage, which all those mediums which were produced at the end of the 19th century until the 20th century, where of course we find the cylinders, we also find the first discs, reel-to-reel tapes, magnetic tapes, and these documents which were recorded are artifacts and physical artifacts. So these are analogical. And these are in the family of magnetic supports. In this era of analog documents, we also find music, which has been recorded, radio programs, which have been recorded, oral recordings, art, and as well the first audiobooks. And this was a result of the war, so that the soldiers who lost their sight were able to listen to huge literary works. And of course, the sound environment, the sound landscape. In the second stage, we find digital documents which are of digital origin, which means these are documents at the end of the last century and the beginning of this 21st century. We have seen the resurgence of new types of documents, of audio documents. We have podcasts. There's also a resurgence of audiobooks, which many libraries are currently promoting as a method or a way of promoting audiobooks and listening to audiobooks. And all these contents which are distributed through our social networks. The cultural landscape, which also has to do with the recording of sounds, which are distinguished within a space, a specific space. So we are going to continue. Next slide, please. Therefore, when we are speaking about audio collections, audio documents, we have to take into account that it's a part of our cultural heritage. And because of this, the efforts that are being developed by UNESCO, which are being promoted by UNESCO since the end of the last century until today, and by different international organizations such as IASA, which is the International Association of Sound Documents and Audiovisual Documents. These organizations have concentrated in recognizing that when we are speaking about audio collections, we need to think about that we're speaking specifically about our cultural heritage, which on many occasions is very unique and very singular, if you remember what I was saying before. So this is the first idea that we cannot lose sight of. But an audio collection, an audio document is also an information, a resource information, which we can put into use for other people in our university, in our libraries, in our archives, and in our museums. More and more, we are speaking about resources, information resources, which are being offered in different institutions. In addition, an audio document is material which can be used to create new content. That means that it can be reused to create an audio document. It can be reused for a class in a university or in a school in order to explain history or to explain Spanish, English. So it has enormous potential. The audio file has enormous educational potential. And this is the testimony of an entire era. So when we are thinking about the future generations in our grandchildren, we need to think that one way in which they will know us will be through these audio recordings. And moreover, it can also be a judicial testimony as well. It can be a testimony which can be used specifically in a trial for different persons. Next slide, please. So on the screen, you can see some of the main archives, main audio archives throughout the world. From 1928, there was the Italian Audio Museum, which was created in order to safeguard all the Italian musical documents. Since then, until now, it has evolved. Until now, it is now called the Digital Library, and it's one of the audiovisual libraries because both have been combined. The both main areas of collections of sound and images have both been combined, and is one of the most recognized, internationally recognized museums because it has a lot of the radio recordings and televised recordings in Italy. Another major example is the National Phonothèque in France, which was created in 1938, which is part of the National Library in France. And this date is important because there are national audio museums, as well as in Costa Rica, which are linked to the national libraries. This means that these national libraries have been recognized, and they have recognized the importance that audio collections have. And the preservation of these audio collections is a way of keeping and preserving their heritage. There's also the British Library, the Library Congress in the UK, which has numerous audio collections. The National Film and Sound Archive in Australia, which also combines conservation of audio documents and audiovisual documents. And the Swiss National Audio Museum, which was a model of audio libraries, which we have copied in Mexico. In Mexico, we created, and I had the opportunity to coordinate the creation of our audio museum in Mexico as an entity which has been dedicated specifically to safeguarding our national heritage. Next slide, please. I'm also sharing with you today some of the radio archives, the most important international radio archives, which are on public radio. There's always a need to conserve collections on the radio, those which have been recorded on radio, because they were created with public resources, and they're a testament to an era and a very part of the heritage. So here I would like to only mention a few of them. There is RAI from Italy, Nippon in Japan, the BBC in London, in Germany, the Swiss Radio, and the NRK from Norway. There are also great sources of radio archives. Next slide, please. So on the screen, you can see some forms of archiving, of archives, which have been, I would also send you the bibliography for those who would like to go deeper into this. So there are radio museums, those from the university dedicated to educations, national archives, where the national audio museums, as well as those of image and sound. They're specialized archives as well, and audio collections for national libraries, for archives and museums, and also music museums. So this is a typology which allows us to go deeper into the huge world that is the conservation of audio documents. Next slide, please. You can see now on your screen, there's an image of the different traditional processes, the analogical processes that we use in order to preserve audio collections. So we have the gathering and development of the audio collections, the organization and cataloging. So that is documenting, conservation and access. So there are 4 main processes which created the way of preserving audio collections of the analogical collections. And for those who are working in libraries, they are very familiar with these processes, although there are a few differences, essential differences, because we are talking about different supports and different languages. We are speaking about the audio language. So we're speaking specifically about processes, intellectual processes, and physical processes, which are developed in a file. I'm not going to go deeper into this, but of course, on another occasion, we'll be able to go deeper into this topic. But these processes, which are developed in archiving analog documents, they all have a specific point in terms of digitalization or the transference of recorded content from analog to digital. Next slide, please. Digitalization, you can is the only way of preserving documents for the future. That is, the analog documents. If in your libraries you still have cylinders, you need to conserve them as a very important element. If you have hard drives, disks, if you have reel-to-reel tapes, if you have cassette tapes, you need to know what content is recorded on them. There can be voices of people from history of people in Trinidad and Tobago. They can have traditional music on them, different cultural audio elements. There can be a lot of facts and events, testimonies, which are part of the history of your country, which must be preserved. And through digitalization, they can be transformed and transferred to sampling of 48 to 96 kilohertz or quantified as 24 bits in different formats such as WAV, BWF, and AIFF. So we're moving from physical objects, and we can see that an audiobook is recorded in a book, on a CD, on a cassette tape, and we move to an intangible world, which is the world of the digital preservation. We're going to speak of course, preserving the digital formats. So next slide, please. So here we are speaking about digital preservation. Digital preservation is the only way in order to conserve in the long term and to give access to these material which we consider to be extremely valuable, that were digitalized or if they have been created digitally beforehand. So that means they're already in WAV format, BWF, and AIFF, MP3, etc. Next slide, please. So on this slide, you're able to see the various formats, which you'll also find in our bibliography. So there are different formats where you do not lose information. There are digital formats And the nearest, which we always listen to music, will be the MP3. And this is a compression format. But when we're talking about a format, we're specifically talking about what contains the information. We have compression where you do not lose any information, and compression where you do lose information. In terms of preservation for sound archives, for libraries, we need to think about preserving forms in WAP, in WAV, compression without losing any data. For example, FLAC, which can be a copy, a way of preserving the documents. And there are also all the formats, the compression formats, which are used in order to give access to the content, the digital content. So this means that when we're talking about digital preservation, we are speaking about preserving formats, digital formats, digital objects. And we're speaking also that this preservation has to be linked to different standards, different processes and parameters in order to ensure the permanency of these digital objects. Next slide, please. So, digital preservation would have to encompass everything that is necessary in order to ensure the existence of these digital objects and access to them in a permanent manner, whether these are processes, technologies, and different actions, policies, and alignments. So this means then that we're going to be speaking about digital objects which incorporate audio or media and metadata. And during the digital preservation, we are also going to work with different systems and management systems, storage systems, or digital archives, where we're able to incorporate and automate processes which were able to control, digitalize, store, catalog, administrate, and also distribute digital data, and by using different standards, different technical standards and technologies which ensure their preservation in the long term. Digital preservation has to be a work which is continuous. It's not one-off. Next slide, please. In these images, I'm going to try to explain in terms of analogical preservation. We used to have storage rooms for the tapes, for cassettes, for discs. We control the temperature, more or less 18 degrees Celsius, 40% humidity of relative humidity, and we maintained the spaces which was clean and dry, which were dust-free, in order to prolong the lifespan of these documents. But now we are finding that these documents, which have been digitalized, and those were originally digitalized, they have to be kept in digital medium or support from hard drives, servers, different tapes, even in the cloud. So these are different ways of preserving that we need to analyze when we are speaking about preserving our heritage, because our heritage cannot be kept in a cloud which has its servers outside of our specific countries of origin. So this is also a topic which we would have to debate and speak a lot on. So digital preservation is going to help us consider the open archival system, a way of preserving for the long term, where we will have to have identify the creators of the content creators, the documenting processes, and the users of this information. And of course, here we are the managers, the administrators, the documentalists, the librarians, so that speaking about digital preservation is a very passionate sphere. It implies going deeper into the digital objects, and above all, to go into a necessary way of preserving our digital heritage. Next slide, please. So this is an introductory webinar. I only will mention that when we're speaking about digital preservation, we're also talking about a series of risks. Technological risks, which is the most imminent, because technology becomes obsolete every so often, every 5 or 7 years, have to change the technology. So therefore, you have to be very clear in order to know which hardware or software and what are we going to use to preserve these digital objects, which are part of my heritage. So this is the first risk we are faced with, because our institutions are they never have enough money in order to be buying new technologies. And we do not have policies in place as well as guidelines which establish cyclical migrations for every specific period, time frame. Another risk is document management. We do not understand precisely how to manage digital documents. We do not understand specifically that we are talking about formats and not physical mediums. So these formats, in this case, we are talking to the audio documents, but also there are other formats for text, for video, for photography. There are also formats for archiving on the web. So this is a very important transition that we're experiencing in terms of the library, in terms of archiving. And this is not new. It's a process which has been going on for more than 2 decades. Another risk that we have to take into account when we're speaking about digital preservation is the political and legal framework. The majority of our countries, there is no framework, no legal framework which protects audio documents and photography, etc. So if we want to protect our books as an important part of our heritage, this type of document, which is very significant for our history, our current history, and for the history which has defined our peoples, our countries. There are no political frameworks either in place. There is no financing, which is permanent. So the economic risk is that they don't understand that when we are speaking about digital preservation and specifically about our institutions need to have a budget, a systematic budget, a permanent budget, an economic budget. Without this, we will lose an essential part of our heritage in terms of our digital heritage. Organizational threats as well. This is also very important because it means that within our organizations, we don't understand that an audio collection is so important as a collection of books or AV material or photography. There's still the idea that exists that they are collections which are special and that they form part, they only form part of archives in libraries. So this lack of recognition of the value of the heritage of these audio documents, this affects how they are preserved and results in their loss. Because of this lack of the recognition of the value of these audio collections in Latin America, we do not, there are institutions which have cylinders, some are in Chile, some are in Mexico. However, the major part of our history, which has been recorded in sound, has been destroyed, has been thrown away, has been lost forever because of a lack of awareness, because of thinking that they are special collections, because we do not have the teams to copy and digitalize these collections, and because we do not know how to do this. Because simply speaking, we are not interested. And because of this, we would need to put an emphasis and attention on this. And the other risk has to do with natural disasters. And here I would like to speak specifically about climate change, especially in the Caribbean. We have seen that these phenomena are present with greater violence, for example, hurricanes, storms. So in Mexico City, for example, in Europe, we are seeing fires, the rise in sea levels, floods, we are seeing cyclones. So there are zones in the world which are more prone to these natural disasters. And they also constitute one of the main risks that prevent the safeguarding of audio documents. Next slide, please. And now to end, I would like to highlight that when we are speaking about digital preservation, we cannot stop thinking about climate change. We cannot neglect climate change because climate change is changing the temperature because of the heat, humidity, because of the rise in sea levels and the hurricanes, and this affects the conditions of conservation of our documents. And because we are threatened, because any natural disaster, whether it can be extraordinary, there's always the risk of losing not only our audio documents, our audio collections, our audiovisual documents, photography, among others. So therefore, this is an aspect which I would like to call attention to and which I would like to highlight in this webinar so that you consider it as a part of the strategies of safeguarding. Next slide, please. To conclude, I would like to put out 3 invitations to you. The first of these is that you're able to know more about our Observatory of Sound Archives and Audiovisual Archives. Daniel, can you please show the map, please? Highlight the map, please. So in this observatory, we have done a lot of work from the Ibero-American Network, where we have been able to geolocalize library archives, museum archives, which have audio collections and audiovisual collections. And we will be continuing to work together with a database to identify risks which are related with these rising sea levels, with heat waves, with fires, and other natural disaster phenomenon, which can affect and which are due to climate change. So here we can see, if we can just zoom into Trinidad and Tobago, we have no identifier in Trinidad and Tobago, as you can see. So I would like to invite you all, so you can sign up, and if you have an archive, and if you want to form part of our working group for the analysis of the risks which are associated to climate change, also please contact me. Danielle, can you put the other format, please? Yes. So this form, which I will share with you in the chat, is a form which you can use which can be published to publish your files, your libraries, if you have audio collections, so that they can be geolocalized, and so that Trinidad and Tobago also will be able to be part of this map. So Danielle, you can please put in the chat the link for this form so people can fill up the form. Thank you very much. So the second invitation that I would like to throw out after this reflection, which we are doing today in terms of the importance of recognizing the risks associated to climate change in the preservation of digital documents. In November, we are going to have the presence of 3 specialists in disaster prevention, natural disaster prevention, from the Indira Gandhi Center. So if you're interested in participating, I would greatly love to share with you the registration, which is the registration. So this course is in person, but it is important so that we are hoping that people from all over the region are able to attend and that they will be able to participate in this course. And finally, the last invitation, in 2028, Mexico, the National Autonomous University of Mexico, and the Institution of Research and Library Research and Information will be organizing an IPRES conference, which is a worldwide conference in terms of preservation, digital preservation, which is a very important conference currently. So you're all cordially invited to attend, and hopefully we'll be able to see each other in 2028 for this conference. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope that this webinar has been of interest to you. Greetings from Mexico City, and Danielle, I will be able to respond to any questions you have. If not, I will leave my email, and I would be really pleased to answer your questions or comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Perla. Wonderful presentation. Just before we take the questions, I want to invite everyone to join us on August 19th at 11 a.m. local time for our final webinar of season 6 of our preservation webinar series. It is Facilities Meets Preservation. Now, proper building maintenance is the first level of protection of library and archival collections. Join us for a discussion on the role and impact of facilities management on the long-term preservation of heritage documentary collections, featuring Mr. Kiran Jagasar, Facilities Manager, NALIS, registered to receive the access link. So now we will take your questions. We have the option of putting questions into the Q&A as well as putting questions into the chat. We had a number of comments coming in during the chat. Folks are, Dr. Perla, folks are very excited to receive your bibliography on the resources. So we look forward to being able to email that to our participants as soon as we get it from you. Of course, we will be sure to include all of the links, including the invitation that you issued as well to the in-person courses, as well as information regarding the iPress conference that's coming up. A person said, thank you for an informative session. Gracias por tan valiosa información. Thank you again, everyone. So we do have a question in the Q&A. I am going to butcher the Spanish, but I will try. And perhaps Nicole can also help us in translating. It says, más que un duda, una observación. ¿Qué rol juega la preservación sonora en un país con México, como México, luego de vivir un evento como el Mundial 2026? Oh, is that referring to football? No, Mundial 2026. I'm not too sure. Let Dr. Perla, who may have been able to read the Q&A, if you would click on, yes, so you can translate it, and you can respond to that comment in the Q&A.
So I will answer very briefly because the World Cup was a very important event for the society because it's an expression of different social contradictions, political contradictions, and economic contradictions, but also it's festivity, joy. So it's an event which, without a shadow of a doubt, has been documented in radio and television. There are photos. So there are no books. However, these material which have been generated need to be conserved from the libraries. We will be able to record some of the events, some of the most significant events, because these are documents. And in terms of Mexico, without a doubt, it was an event, a very historical event, which will form part of our contemporary history and which is documented, of course. So before we used to write books or scientific articles, but now we have the audio collections, which have recorded the voices, the different football matches, but also all the other societal facts, the political and social facts associated with it as well.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I think we got all of the questions. Persons are also asking if this recording will be on the NALIS YouTube page. Yes, as soon as we have it fully transcribed, it will be available on the NALIS YouTube channel. I do not see any other questions. And so I would like to say thank you so very much, Dr. Perla. We look forward to being able to send out the bibliography that you will share with us. We will send it via email to all who have registered. So don't worry, folks. We will send it to you. And you will receive the bibliography that was mentioned. We're excited as well to have it saved and available to all who registered. So thank you so very much, Dr. Perla. Special thanks to our interpreter, Nicole Nelson, as well. And I say thank you finally to all of our participants who have stayed with us and viewed and listened to this presentation. Thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you for our final session in just 2 weeks. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much all. Thank you, Daniel, Tanya, Nicole, and all those who were able to make this possible. Thank you very much.